And we have a verse, one verse from Isaiah, the verse for this service of Christian unity. It's taken from Isaiah 1, and it's verse 17. Learn to do right, seek justice, defend the oppressed, take up the cause of the fatherless, plead the case of the widow. Amen.
Thank you, Nikki. We are delighted to invite Alison up, who's going to share with us for 10 minutes, or 10 minutes or so, on the subject of racism in our communities. You've got to really listen here, though, guys, because on your table there are some questions. Not that you have to fill them in now. After Alison has spoken, we will then be going into a conversation, 10 minutes of conversation on our tables to discuss the subject in more detail. So I'm going to pass you over to Alison, who's going to share with us.
All right, the sound, can you hear me? Oh, that's better. You can hear me now. Wonderful. Absolutely fantastic. Now, oh, it's working really well. Now, my daughter accused her father of selling her for a bottle of gin. Now, it wasn't quite what happened, but actually, there's quite a bit of truth in it. You see, Tess, our daughter, she fell in love with a young man, Akin, of Nigerian descent. And Akin searched me out and asked for permission to court our daughter. Very polite young man. And after a couple of years, they decided they would like to get married. Now, at this point, Akin's parents contacted us, Tess's parents, and said, okay, I think we'd better get together, don't you? And we said, yeah, I think that'd be great. Let's get together. And we spent a wonderful weekend meeting one another, getting to know each other's families, each other's cultures and backgrounds. And towards the afternoon of the last day, we'd said to the young people who'd gone out to visit friends, don't be back late because we've got your betrothal ceremony to come. And they said, that's fine, don't worry, won't be back late. Anyway, it came to the hour and they weren't there, so we waited a bit longer and they weren't there, so we waited a little bit longer. And then in the end, Femi said, well, we don't need the young people at their betrothal anyway, because this is about the families. So let's carry on. So we did. And Femi began to explain that he consulted the tribal elders and they had given their approval for this match to go ahead, and spoke warmly and about our own daughter, Tess. And we in turn said encouraging things, I hope, about our future son-in-law, Akin, and how good it would be for the two families to become united through this match. And then we prayed. We prayed for the young couple, we prayed for their future, we prayed for the families, we prayed for this union together and everything that it meant. And then Femi took a bottle of gin and he passed it to my husband and he said, with this bottle, let us seal this betrothal. And my husband reached out his hand to take hold of the gin at the same time as my daughter opened the door and walked in. And there she saw her father taking the bottle of gin to seal their betrothal. But it was good. The wedding was a wonderful mix of a Cornish rural church and an imported London band. My goodness, 2 coaches full, hundreds of people. And there was more equipment than was behind us. It felt like the roof of this Cornish church was going to take off when this band began playing. The amplifiers that they had, literally, that the roof was going to lift. And the half a dozen elderly ladies that usually worship there, they were reveling in it. They thought, this is amazing. This is wonderful. Nothing so exciting has ever happened in our church before, ever. I love the Nigerian sense of time as the worshippers arrived at some point during the wedding, and as we came back out of the church, still more were still arriving in time to be able to leave. But that was great. We went back for a Cornish cream tea and red stew and jollof rice, you know, all mixed together. We had the traditional British wedding clothes for some, and the ceremonial Nigerian dress, and it was just an amazing mix of cultures and learning together. And then, of course, when the grandchildren arrived, well, we had both the 8-day naming ceremony where the grandparents all decide what the child's going to be called, and it's done with a lot of prayer, and every name's got a meaning, and this is what God's calling this child to be. And then, of course, 2 or 3 months later, we had the usual church baptism and christening party. So it's been an education for all of us, and a place of learning. And then the young couple went to London, where they live, with their family. One of our neighbours who attended the wedding, because actually we come from a tiny village and we just invited the entire village to come, which sort of helped to fill, you know, with the couple of hundred that come from London. It was just great. But anyway, one of these neighbours, a few months ago, I met him in the village and he was bemoaning the state of the nation at the moment. I don't know if anybody ever does that, you know, whoa, everything's going wrong, you know. And he said in the end, you know what the real problem is? And I said, what's that then? He said, well, it's these people that come and live in our country, isn't it? You know? I said to him, because he'd been at the wedding, I said to him, do you mean my daughter and her family? And he looked shocked and said, no, I don't mean Tess and Akin, no, not at all. I mean these people that live up in London. I said, well, so you do mean my daughter then, don't you? No, I mean these people that, they're not white. I said, well, you definitely mean my daughter and her family then, don't you? And he was so embarrassed, really embarrassed, because I don't think he thought it through. You know, we can have an ideology, we know what's right, and we think we know what's right. But then, when it's somebody that's living alongside us, when it's somebody that we know, when it's somebody he'd seen Tess grow up from a child, when it's somebody that's part of our community, and when he realised what he was really saying, he was incredibly embarrassed. And I think that's the thing, we often are not aware of the cultures around us, of the races around us, of the diversity. And we need to think about how we can become more inclusive and more welcoming as a nation, as a culture, and as a community. One of the local primary schools here, there are 20 different languages spoken by the children in their own homes. 20 different languages. So there are a number of children, a significant number of children, who are speaking English in Launceston as their second language. They have a different culture and a different language at home. And the school has worked really hard to assimilate the different cultures, to welcome them, to create a spirit of diversity. There was from another school, there was a mother that came to me in tears a few months ago. She's got 2 little children at a primary school, a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old. And they were being teased because their English was not good, because they were different. And they were being teased by 5-year-olds and 7-year-olds. And it took a few weeks for this poor mother in her broken English to be able to explain to the school what was going on, in order that the school could then put things right. And they had to take quite effective measures to be able to put this right, because I think perhaps they hadn't realised what was happening, and it wasn't just a quiet word with the class teacher. It was actually having to address a culture in the school and what the children were picking up and how they were expressing it. And they did. They embraced that challenge to create an inclusive and welcoming community. So, you know, I once belonged to a white English family. Totally white, totally English. English through and through. I couldn't even find a sort of distant relative that was not English and white. Today, my family spans 5 continents, 4 different African nations, a number of European nations, from the New World, China, Brazil. Racial diversity has been thrust upon me, and I love it. So I think, as Kevin said, there are some questions for us on these tables for us to think about. How do we embrace and love this racial diversity in our midst? What is God saying to us through this? How is he calling us to respond, to show God's love to those around us, and especially to those who may seem a little bit different? I commend the questions to you. God bless.